This particular work session is to try to make progress on the anaphylaxis phenotype definition that is now required to go through some iteration. As you know, there was an initial version that was posted in the OHDSI forums. The peer review was Dr. Andrea Noel, and she provided some input. Those inputs were considered by the community, and we have a design in place to address those. So we have to make progress on it. The initial progress is to build the cohort definition logic, and this work session is all about that. So do you guys want to go around, do a quick introduction of yourself? Andrea, you start because you're the lead on this.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Noel. I'm one of the physicians on the clinical team at Epic. I'm based out of Verona, Wisconsin, and acting as the peer reviewer and I guess leading the potential conversion of this phenotype into a publication.
Yep. And David, do you want to go next?
Sure. This is David Escaya. I work at Bayer, based in Barcelona, Spain. I am a senior epidemiologist and working on cardiovascular diseases.
Okay, I'll go. I'm Ann Phillips. I'm the Director of Government and Standards with Intelligent Medical Objects. And I'm just trying to learn about phenotype building, and I learned a lot over the last week.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Ann.
And I am Washington, D.C.
Welcome.
I'll go. My name's Ryan Kenny. I work within the RWD clinical science team for Astellas Pharma. I'm based out of the Chicago suburbs, and I've been I do mainly most of our concept set cohort creations within our studies. So also just trying to learn and see what I can build in my repertoire and help where I can. Also, my clinical background, I'm a RN with most of my experience in emergency room.
I'm Kevin Haynes. I'm at Janssen with Gowtham. I'm an associate director of epidemiology. I'm a pharmacist, trained pharmacist and epidemiologist, and I report every anaphylactic event that I have on my Penn Medicine Epic app, so that it is there for the data. I also call the FDA directly and my insurer so that it creates even, every single piece for drug safety, all in the name.
Yay! I hope you haven't had a lot of anaphylactic events, though. Okay, good.
Oh, working with Kevin is fantastic. So yesterday we were working on a bleeding events outcome, and he said, what if I have bleeding every 15 days when I'm shaving? And I asked him, how often do you shave? Because we need a rate. And it says every 15 days. All right, let's continue.
I'll go next. I'm Evan Minty. I practice as a general internist out in Calgary, Canada. I remain on board with Nigam Shah's lab at Stanford, and that's where I typically access OMOP data, but I'm on sabbatical from my clinical work this year and also helping out with the Phenotype project with Gowtham and ASA and the Janssen team.
My name is Miguel Angel Mayer. I'm from Barcelona in Spain. I'm the research coordinator of our OMOP instance in Hospital del Mar, participating in the different projects, Eden, Darwin, and in OHDSI proposals.
Great. Okay. And then lastly, my name is Gowtham Rao. I'm a physician by training, also an epidemiologist. And I'm helping the community make progress on the science of phenotyping. So let's go ahead. Andrea, so you made a post and you requested revise and submit. Very briefly, can you summarize your feedback?
Sure. So our initial phenotype that we were considering for Phenotype February was a diagnosis-based phenotype that was looking at a basically a single window in time for inclusion in the cohort and looking at any type of encounter where that diagnosis could be placed. And as I read through that phenotype, I know that a lot of us probably worked on anaphylaxis in regards to COVID vaccines in 2020, and I did as well here at Epic. And one of the things that concerned me about the phenotype was that we're probably encapsulating a lot of outpatient care for anaphylaxis, and just knowing coding practices around the community. Let's say I have a bee sting allergy and I come back to my allergist and they refill my EpiPen, the chance that I might receive another anaphylaxis diagnosis on that outpatient encounter just for that refill is non-zero, actually probably pretty high. And that doesn't even need to be with an allergist, that could be with any type of provider. So I recommended some changes, some things that we might want to include. So if we're looking for a definition of acute anaphylaxis, I recommended that we may look to types of care where that treatment might happen, so emergency or inpatient encounters, and then potentially investigating a few more additional criteria to really get down to acute anaphylactic events. So looking for evidence of treatment and looking for potentially a few other strengtheners for acute anaphylaxis events that could involve, depending on the data set that we're looking for evidence of allergies with allergen types recorded, and a handful of other things. So where we are at is Gowtham took my feedback, appreciate that, and we've proposed a few other cohorts that we wanted to run against a few OMOP data sets. And just see how a little bit more nuance to those definitions might perform on the different data sets.
That's right. So I try to digest Andrea's review, and I proposed a certain design. The design was to try to differentiate between individuals who are having follow-up care for a history of anaphylaxis from those individuals which I described as directly observed acute anaphylaxis and recent anaphylaxis and recovered. And I'm talking about recent anaphylaxis and recovered are those that had anaphylaxis this morning or maybe yesterday, recovered, but then are now seeking medical care. So the three subtypes of the anaphylaxis phenotype that I tried to capture were the directly observed active anaphylaxis. They are in anaphylaxis right now. They're receiving care for anaphylaxis in a hospital, ER, or urgent care. They would be expected to receive treatments like epinephrine, steroids, antihistamines, bronchodilators, and fluids. The other extreme are people with a history of anaphylaxis. This would mean specificity errors. This is not the clinical idea that we are trying to identify in our data source. According to Andrea's review, we may be capturing individuals who meet this third criteria. So these are individuals who had a recent or history of anaphylaxis, and are now they had an EpiPen at home, and now they are just coming for a prescription or a dispensation of an EpiPen to prevent a future anaphylaxis, like part of the anaphylaxis action plan. So the one in the middle are the ones that had anaphylaxis in the morning. They probably received an EpiPen, and the assumption here is these individuals may get other supportive care, but probably not epinephrine. They may get steroids, they may get antihistamines, and so on. So is this an accurate synthesis?
Maybe. I'm not completely sure how often we'll see follow-up care within a one-day window from an acute anaphylactic event. So I don't have a good handle on how often that pattern of care is seen.
Okay, so these are the individuals who had anaphylaxis at home yesterday, and they're now coming for care today.
Yes, I don't know how often that actually happens.
How about same day? They had anaphylaxis in the morning and they've recovered.
I'm just not sure how often this pattern of care happens. My gut feeling is that people are more likely to seek care when they're having symptoms or when they need a refill of their medication. Like those seem to me like the two most likely scenarios where someone will receive a diagnosis of anaphylaxis or testing.
So our goal is to essentially see in the original submitted definition, how many of those individuals meet criteria number 3, which is false positives.
So criteria number 3 is a diagnosis that I don't understand what plus office visit restriction means.
Sorry, I thought I was sharing my screen. I was waving my hand on the screen. And then I realized I was not sharing the screen. Okay, so so in the forum post, I proposed 3 different ideas. This is the idea that we are talking about.
Yeah.
History of anaphylaxis coming for follow-up care. Individuals that have not had a recent anaphylaxis, that is, recent would be like within 1 day, have a history of anaphylaxis at some point in the past, maybe 2 months, 6 months, 1 year. They just want an EpiPen.
Yep.
And that's the main, you can call that noise.
Yep. Yep. Sorry, when we said number 3, I was mixing up cohort number 3, which you defined lower, and concept number 3. So sorry.
Yeah, I realized when you were looking at your other screen, like maybe you're not seeing my screen, and then I realized I'm not sharing the screen. Okay. All right. So so what would be the cohort logic for if we had to build a cohort definition? So in terms of diagnostics, what we can do is to see to build a cohort definition to attempts to model this, and then see of the people who met our original definition, how many have also meet this new definition, which would give us a sense of number of false positives in our original definition.
Yeah, potentially one other would be if this this particular definition here is not requiring any evidence of acute care.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there is no evidence of acute care. There is no inpatient care. There's no ER. There is no diagnosis. No, there's no procedure code such as urgent care, emergency care, inpatient care, and resuscitation fluids. But they have the code of anaphylaxis.
Yep. Are we able to tell in the data sets the difference between prescribed medications and administered medications?
I've never done that. I thought about, I mean, the example that you gave in your write-up was an administered medications would be pretty much every epinephrine other than EpiPen.
I do believe that emergency departments also administer EpiPens.
Oh, they do.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing with this. Actually, it was one of the things I was working on when I was trying to sort out how to build some of these. I didn't see anything that I could figure out an atlas that looked at dispense, but that made a distinction between a dispense and an administration. And I think like I don't see how you do it unless you were pulling stuff off the MAR. And for an outpatient space, that there is no distinction really.
Right. There is no outpatient MAR. Period.
No, of course.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I don't even think in the inpatient space that we have that granularity in the data.
Gotcha. Do we have the ability to look for administration codes? Because a lot of times a medicine might be coded differently than an administration for a medicine, depending on your data source.
So we have to, yeah. So this is where the complexity. This is where understanding the data sources will be of value. I understand the U.S. claim system. I do not understand very well the U.S. health hospital systems, electronic health record systems. I do not have any understanding on non-U.S. healthcare data sources. But in the U.S. healthcare system, we can look for CPT-4 codes in the claims data that documents administration of epinephrine. I do not know if it exists, but we can look for it. In an electronic health record system, I do not know if there is how it is documented.
The only other feature that I was curious about is that there do seem to be some, I don't know how well used they are. There do seem to be some features that relate to prescription length, or something like that. And I would but I don't know how that would necessarily come from an EpiPen prescription. Like they very, very well might get more than one. They might be, there might be a limit in terms of, so I think I haven't prescribed them, to be honest. I think you just kind of write down one EpiPen or 3 EpiPens. I don't think you actually structure it such that you have some fixed duration of time for this, for that prescription. So it may not be useful there either.
I think it'd be fairly common for a prescription duration to be 1 year. I think a lot of physicians are comfortable if patients follow up for things they're prescribing within a 1 year window. Although my strong suspicion is that due to the price of EpiPens, a lot of people use them past their expiration date.
So I am bringing up I'm bringing up a table here, which is a return of the search term epinephrine. It is showing the record counts of all the codes that have the epinephrine in it, and it goes to 201 pages. In this, I can see several individual concepts.
Can I just make a quick comment?
Yeah.
I think with the epinephrine, you just have to be careful that it's the right dosage for a sub-Q or an IM injection versus the 1 milligram that's used in like a cardiac arrest. So the dosing on here is really important.
So 1 milligram is used for cardiac. So what is the dose for?
0.3 to 0.5, I believe.
But the IM,
the one that's labeled auto injector.
The IM formulation is 1 milligram per mil. I to be honest, so I went through this kind of in building these out. I think in the context of having had, not thinking about the office-based visit for a refill, but thinking about the kind of the acute visit where you have, where you have some anaphylaxis codes as one of the entry criteria, I was pretty comfortable in terms of kind of, for just aiming to get a little bit more specificity of just an ingredient exposure to epinephrine. I fully recognize that they may have had an arrest and maybe they got different dose. Maybe they went on to an epi infusion, but I could live with that if they had a anaphylaxis code, that precipitated the, that precipitated the visit or is associated with the visit. Because otherwise there's going to be a lot of engineering here in terms of trying to figure out which of these is appropriate. And I don't even know how well that is going to be captured in source data systems.
Yeah. if we are not clear about this, it's not probably going to be a time sink to go through and try to select out of these 10,040 individual ways to represent epinephrine.
Exactly. So
To identify
I just chose ingredient, like epinephrine as an ingredient, and for that use case, I'd be pretty comfortable with that. It's a little bit harder with the outpatient visit, but if we were careful in terms of making sure that these are true outpatient visits and not as you alluded to, actually emergency visits or other types of visit. Given that we can't really distinguish between a dispense and an administration, I think it'd be fairly rare for people to show up, make a doctor's appointment and show up in anaphylaxis, in a state of active anaphylaxis at a true outpatient environment, and get administered epi.
Unlikely, unless it's an urgent care.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of times urgent cares are not considered emergent encounter locations.
So, I guess what we could do is we could do take a look at some of the profiles and see if we can identify things that look like urgent care. I think we've definitely seen that, Gowtham, we've seen kind of the challenges of that outpatient visit type, and see if there's other ways we can kind of restrict those. But that might just be a struggle that we're stuck with, and maybe this winds up being hard to execute.
Yeah, it might be. So this is I was thinking about this with you all. So we have, is it the one? No, not this. This is appendicitis. Sometimes mixing the two. All right, so this was the submitted cohort definition. Submitted cohort definition basically is anchored on a diagnosis of anaphylaxis of any cause, and that's it. Now we want to split this into two types of ideas. One is anaphylaxis in an urgent, emergent, inpatient kind of setting, where a person is more likely to be administered epinephrine rather than prescribed an EpiPen for care, for future anaphylaxis plan, versus people who have a diagnosis of anaphylaxis, but are not in any form of setting that would be inpatient, emergency, or urgent care. And I think we can achieve that. Then the next question would be, among the persons who we know are not being treated in an inpatient, emergent, or urgent care setting and have the diagnosis of anaphylaxis, how many of them are truly having anaphylaxis versus just having a follow-up care? So if we split that, and we observe that the people who belong to the inpatient, urgent care, emergent, versus the people who do not belong to the inpatient, urgent care, and emergent are different types of people, then we can, it's worth investing more time.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
The probably the hardest one will be the urgent care, but the timelines look different when they're in an emergency room versus not. And so it's just a matter of how do you structure an algorithm to capture those differences.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that 99% of the dispensed EpiPens from a retail pharmacy, like my wife may do this afternoon, 99% of that is not going to be administered right there, right? 99% of that is a prescription, which to translate into ordering, an EMR doc wrote a prescription. That's prescription written. Gets taken to a pharmacy, it's dispensed, we see it in claims. 99% of that is not administered on that day. We kind of all agree on that. What I'm interested in is actually, is that an actual proxy for I just used my EpiPen, I need a refill because now my school used the EpiPen because I had anaphylaxis at school and I need a new repeat. That to me is just an interesting methodologic piece that we begin to pick up potential breadcrumbs of events that happened that didn't happen. Now, most of the dispensings in September are going to be because they're off to school and they need the EpiPen for the nurse's office. Most of the dispenses in June are going to be for heading off to camp and those types of things. And you're not going to get, you're going to have these little spikes. I bet if you just looked at dispensings of EpiPens at retail pharmacies across America, you'd have this type of thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that any administration in an EMR, Epic, CVS, looking at you, CVS, I know you're on there, Minute Clinics, right? Any Epic EpiPen in a administered thing, that happened, whether it's urgent care or ED or inpatient, that happened that day, that minute, broadly speaking.
I'd say like maybe one tiny caveat to that would be folks that use the ED for primary care and come in for a refill. There would also be a chance, and I'm not saying this is common, I'm just guessing, that you may also appear to have a medicine dispensed from an internal ED pharmacy that wasn't used but was given to the patient.
I do.
So
I agree. If it's given to the patient out of the crash carts, out of the carts, I completely agree with you. It will look like it was administered, but it was really take this home. However, discharge medications as prescriptions written are a different system. I used to work at Penn, so I know the Inclarity system, and we paid 3M a boatload of money to help clean up the discharge medication lists and get them epicized so that they could be in the warehouse. So yeah, I agree. If they physically hand you the box in the ED, you won't necessarily be able to disambiguate that. But I think if it was a prescription written, it's back to take this to the pharmacy to fill, and it's no different than office visit.
Yeah, agreed.
Let's classify this into edge cases, so things that we expect may happen, but it happens rare. So I heard you using the emergency room for primary care for dispensation of the EpiPen. How common do we expect this to be? In other words, should we worry about this in our modeling process or not? Just starting, like we need to break this down into bite-size, manageable chunks. Is this something that we need to model?
Rare. Knowing how expensive EpiPens are, if I was a pharmacy manager in charge of an ED and I saw my stock getting disappeared, walking the streets, write scripts, let these people go.
Excellent.
Agreed.
So basically, dispensation from the box and giving it to the patient's hand will be less likely to happen. They're going to get a prescription, and that will look like an outpatient pharmacy dispensation. Fantastic. What other edge cases are there that we need to talk about, can capture?
Depending on where data sets are pulling their diagnoses from. I know this has been talked about in the phenotype meetings before, but there is definitely the phenomena of persistence on the problem list. So if someone has been diagnosed with anaphylaxis and that has made its way from an encounter or a billed diagnosis onto a patient's permanent problem list, you can have overlap of the problem list with an emergency visit for something else where epinephrine is also administered, like cardiac arrest. And so if we are looking for someone who has a persistent diagnosis of anaphylaxis and receives epinephrine in an emergency visit, we might be overcounting there.
So cardiac arrest is not common compared to anaphylaxis. So the epinephrine use in cardiac arrest being so rare, I'm fine with that. But are you concerned about?
Well, I would wager that cardiac arrest might be more common in an emergency visit than anaphylaxis.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, how is it, how common in terms of epinephrine use? Lidocaine and epinephrine is sometimes used, many times used together. Is that of a bigger concern in terms of frequency of epinephrine administration compared to cardiac arrest?
I don't think lidocaine is indicated for anaphylaxis, and I do not think lidocaine is an ingredient in EpiPens. So an administration of lidocaine and epinephrine, I don't think together.
Yes, I was sorry.
Will be indicative.
I was talking about the problem list carry forward. So if somebody has a problem list of anaphylaxis and now is coming for a different reason, which involves the use of lidocaine and epinephrine, would that be a problem?
I cannot see a co-administration of lidocaine and epinephrine being indicative of anaphylaxis. So it would probably be an exclusion.
You know, it might be easier though to actually look for some kind of resuscitation code, which I think would probably be, from what I've seen in the profiles, does show up in the data, and lidocaine might not be used depending on the rhythms and stuff they see. So.
But we're talking about medications that are mixed or separate medications, because I saw lidocaine epinephrine as a mixed agent medication in your list. And I would guess that something like that is probably being used for laceration repair, maybe?
Yeah. So that's a use case I was trying to get at. So if somebody has anaphylaxis in their problem list, but now are coming for laceration, and in that laceration they got epinephrine lidocaine administered, would that appear as somebody who got epinephrine for anaphylaxis, because anaphylaxis is being carried forward while they're getting epinephrine for laceration repair?
I would just exclude that particular medication combo from the query, but it might still be captured in that base epinephrine as a drug ingredient.
Okay. All right. So I think if we can, there's a cardiologist saying something. There's amiodarone and epinephrine. Yep. Okay. So let's try to focus on the simple one, which is to see how many people get epinephrine. No, how many people get the diagnosis of anaphylaxis without being in an inpatient, emergent, or urgent care setting. Let's focus on that and see if that's even, how many people meet that criteria. I think if we get that number, then we can get an understanding of how many people meet this criteria. I would like to focus our energy just to build the phenotype of people who are receiving and doctor's office visit with a diagnosis score of anaphylaxis and something like an EpiPen. Okay. So I'm gonna try to model that in Atlas, and then let's run it and see if we get any people in it. To model this, we have to. People have to have a diagnosis. Have to have a diagnosis of anaphylaxis. They should be in an physician's office. Should be not be patient. So we want to identify how many people have the diagnosis of anaphylaxis, but are receiving care in a doctor's office. Not be inpatient. Why is this important?
Gowtham, we're losing your sound a little bit.
So can you hear me now? Close it. Can you hear me? Is it clear?
A little soft, but yeah.
We
Is this
can
better?
hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the definition that was submitted was anaphylaxis by diagnosis. What we are trying to do is to say we want to identify people who have the diagnosis of anaphylaxis, but the setting is physician office and it is not inpatient ER or urgent care. The reason is a reason I'm thinking about framing this definition this way is because we can identify between inpatient, in most of the data sources, there is difference between inpatient, ER, and outpatient. But inside outpatient, we find it hard to differentiate between what outpatient is it? Is it a physician's office? Is it a lab? Or is it even an outpatient hospital? We find it very hard. So what I was thinking of is if we can model an event which is anaphylaxis that is not in an acute care setting, then those people are probably more likely to be not true anaphylaxis events. And if we can see that these individuals have characteristics that are not consistent with a true anaphylaxis, so they don't have wheezing, they don't have epinephrine dispensations, or they have epinephrine dispensations, but they don't have bronchodilators and antihistamines and so on, then maybe they truly don't have anaphylaxis. We don't know. So in terms of the cohort definition logic, sorry, I'm just getting there. Okay. So they should have this could be one implementation, should be an it should be a doctor's office. Should not be patient. Should not be urgent care. So what this will give us is people who have the diagnosis of anaphylaxis, any code. So we're anchoring on a code, but they should have a doctor's office visit. It should not be inpatient, and it should not be an emergency. It should not be urgent care. And the approach be inpatient.
We're expecting this cohort to be small.
Yes, and if we identify that this cohort is small, then that gives us evidence that the scenario that Andrea has suggested is causing the specificity error is small. So like this is small. If you observe that 99% of the people do not meet this criteria, then that is telling us something. But if you observe that 70% of the people meet this one, it's telling something else.
So why do you expect that to be small? Like people getting refills for an EpiPen?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say, actually, I expect this to be high, but not real. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, people are documenting the reason that you're here is anaphylaxis. You're not here for anaphylaxis, but I have to chart something, because if I get audited by the big bad insurer, I got to show why I was dispensing this medication.
So Gowtham, this is Bruce Brea. Sorry I came on
Hey.
late, but it's an interesting discussion. One of the issues here is that there is a personal history of anaphylaxis, a Z code, a Z78.8 sort of thing, that would be that group 3 patients that have had a previous history, but it's not current anaphylaxis. Then the true anaphylaxis code is a T78 code. So there is a code for that group 3 group. It'd be interesting to see. We know that these ICD codes aren't well used, so but it'd be interesting to differentiate.
Bruce, say that code again, because I'm not familiar with it.
So Z78, I'm sorry, Z87.892. Just had to look it up. Z87.8, I think, is the root one. And there's some subcodes there. And that's the personal history of, I think, right?
I see. So you expect that persons who are receiving EpiPen for a problem list of anaphylaxis, they're not experienced anaphylaxis right now. They should be
looks like the right code for that. And then if they had acute anaphylaxis, it would be that T78.00XS sort of thing. So in theory, you can differentiate acute from past history, but I know the activities aren't the same, and I know it looks like you kind of clustered them together. I don't know how helpful that would be. It'd be interesting to look in the database to see that.
Yeah, so as of right now, this particular definition, which is the definition that was evaluated and submitted, does not have that Z code. So ICD-10-CM of personal history of anaphylaxis is not part of this current definition.
Okay. So but that is the group that would be in that group 3. That seems like it'd be the right code. So maybe they've already been excluded, is what it looks like. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, so unless people get both codes at the same time. So it is possible that somebody would get the T code, which is the anaphylaxis, and the Z code, which is personal history of anaphylaxis, on the same event by the same physician. Then those individuals would be allowed in this definition. Okay, so what I'm doing now is just building up the definition. So we are taking the same entry event criteria of all-cause anaphylaxis. I have some additional rules here, so I'm building the logic for it. And then in this particular criteria, I'm going to build up individual components one at a time. So it should be a doctor's office, should be inpatient, should not be emergency room, and should not be urgent care. So I'm now building should not be inpatient. And for this, I'm using a code set called inpatient visit. And there's also the inpatient ER. So in OMAP world, there are 2 main visit concepts for inpatient, and they are inpatient, and there is one which is inpatient and ER. So I'm going to select those 2 to start out. Where is it? The cohort ID is just bring port concept identifiers there. So what this will do is if somebody enters the cohort using any one of these codes, and remember this code is mostly the T codes of ICD-10, does not have the Z codes of personal history. It has some other additional codes, but does not have the Z codes. Here, I'm saying exactly zero occurrence of the visit inpatient. and then I need to specify some time period for it in relation to this date. So I'll say if where inpatient starts all days before this date, and 0 days before. So I want to make sure that the inpatient start date and end date starts on or before this date. Actually, maybe I can give it 1 day after, just to be conservative.
Yeah, that's what I'd done. I'd kind of give an overlapping day on each side.
Yeah. So even if the inpatient date starts the day after the diagnosis of anaphylaxis, I'll remove that person. So it's because it's exactly 0. They should not meet this criteria. And in visit starts and event ends. So that means inpatient duration ends. It should end, even if it ends from 1 day before to all days after. Okay. So what we just did is just use a temporal logic to say we have so this is one date. So that date, and now if there is an inpatient visit, that if this is the span of the inpatient visit, if it can start from any time before this date up to 1 day after. And the end date of the inpatient stay should be any time from up to 1 day before to all days after. And I think that will cover all inpatient stays, inpatient visits for the person, where even one of those inpatient days is any time from 1 day before anaphylaxis to 1 day after anaphylaxis.
And it's worth clarifying here that it's just going to look like a lot of gymnastics to people who haven't kind of had to put in these two-sided intervals before. The SQL translations just tend to work better when it's entered this way. Like you could envision just combining those criteria into one line, but then that tends to just mess up the query. So because I don't know how many people have actually had to write their temporal restrictions that way before, but that's why he's doing this. And it drives me nuts every time. So I actually draw it out. So basically, he's kind of defining the window, but with two sides, and then a unlimited window on the other end.
So now I'm building up the concept set for emergency room, and I'm going to pick this one. What I observe, so I'm going to come to this one at after I build the initial structure. But notice here, when I search for emergency room, I'm observing emergency room general classification to have a record count of 222 million, while the OMA visit domain has 904. Just keep that in mind, and this is something that Evan and I are thinking about, but I just want you to keep that in mind. So now I have built a concept set called emergency room, and that's basically emergency room and its descendant. And I'm going to use the same temporal logic, which is you should have exactly 0 occurrences of emergency room where event starts all days before to 1 day after. I do 1 day after. Yes, all days before to 1 day after. And additional constraint. Emergency room is usually 1 day, but it could be 2 days. So if it's more than 2 days, then we have to take into account the second row. So here, do the same thing. And ends 0 days before to all 1 day before. 1 day before, yes. Okay. So now it's the same identical idea. So 0 days before emergency room. Okay. Now we have to figure out urgent care. And urgent care is more complicated. Doctor's office is also more complicated. So in OMOP world, there is something called as a visit table. And the visit table is supposed to represent the type of visit. And it's represented by this concept with this field called visit concept ID. It has certain level of granularity, but it may not represent some ideas. So what is urgent care? The visit domain in OMOP does not know what urgent care is. It knows inpatient, it knows emergency room. It does not know urgent care. So if we define an urgent care is defined differently by different organizations. In US claim systems, there are CPT codes that represent the idea of urgent care. So there are 5-digit codes called 99215 that represents the physician encounter, but there are, I think, what is it? So, there is a CP revenue code. Is there a CPT code for it? Urgent care facility. No, that's not it. So there is no CPT code for it. All right. Okay, so it's got a code for, they use emergency department billing. Okay. Emergency care. So let's figure out emergency care. So we're building a concept set expression that represents the idea of urgent care. Urgent care can include emergency care. So let's see. CPT. Okay, so there is a CPT4 hierarchy that says emergency department services. So I'm going to select that one and add it to my concept set. Go there. No. Okay, so I have to use a different trick here. So I'm gonna, so because for this particular one, I'm going to build a concept set expression for that includes codes outside the visit domain to represent urgent care, and that will be defined as any form of urgent or emergent care provided represented in procedure domain. So we would say here, I build a tab here. Let's go concept set. Urgent care concept. I'm going to search. There's no urgency. Search emergency. What's a CPT code? Let's go get that hierarchy. CPT4. Emergency department services. Okay. And once I get my seed concept, now I'm going to use the informatics recommender system to take me further. So I have my initial seed, and it's going to keep on recommending now. And I will add it. That was set patient evaluation now, electrocardiographic procedure. Office of other outpatient or for evaluation management, established patient medically appropriate or no. Yeah, that's it. Emergency. Urgent. Okay. So does that mean there is any more? this becomes this optimized. Okay. So we have two concepts from the emergency domain there that has a large of record count, has the CPT codes procedure, which CPT are 99 and 284, 282, 281, 282, 283, 284, 285. So it has the entire all the CPT 4 codes. These are the CPT 4 codes that I was looking for: 99281, 99282, 99283, 99284, 99285. What is that? That's hierarchy, position of qualified healthcare professional direction, emergency. Okay. Right. All right. So these are pretty much the complete vocabulary, at least in the US, for the idea of emergency services. Do you guys know any other way to represent emergency services in any vocabulary that we may be missing?
It would often, it could be by just a site of care. Could differentiate. And I guess I didn't catch, there are CPT for urgent care. I think 99201 is and somewhere in that range is urgent care specifically. 201 to 215 or something, but you know, having
so it says it's at 99.
well, it looks like that's deprecated. So I was looking quickly at an old sort of thing, but
yeah, but it's
so
yeah. So we're looking for codes. So we have already captured site of care. Now we're looking for services that represent urgent care. That is to go over and above site of care. Site of care, we have classified. We know that that's part of the visit domain, which is inpatient or ER. We got that. Now I want to be more comprehensive and make sure that there's no services that represent urgent, emergent type of care. And if okay. 99201, have a good evening, David. Yeah, so if there is a code someplace, office outpatient divisions.
okay, it looks like those are the routine outpatient codes, and the idea is you can escalate if it's more urgent. But so I was looking at the wrong place here. I try to ignore these codes as much as possible. They're the bane of our existence.
Yeah, I used to remember the codes. Now I don't. New patient office visit. So let's see. So this site is usually good. This is my previous employer. So let's see.
Yeah, I don't know if this is specific to emergency or urgent care.
No, it does look like that. You're right that it is not. This is the same as any ambulatory clinic. Although from that perspective, that would kind of fit the patients in the group 3. So that's the question. Do you really need to exclude urgent care from this cohort?
So we
somebody has a rash and they're worried that it was their previous anaphylaxis kicking in, so they come in and to get an evaluation, and it's, you know, it's one of these codes that still seems to fit your definition of that group 3, right?
So you're talking about somebody who has a rash, may not be having anaphylaxis, but because they had a history of anaphylaxis, the physician will say, let me give you a prescription of EpiPen anyways, just so that
Or
we
else they've had a prescription and it ran out, or they were just worried a bit. And, you know, the problem is a rash is a frequent reason for urgent visit.
yeah.
So, but I don't know how often that happens. It's been a few years since I've done ER type work, so. I don't mean to unnecessarily complicate this because I'm not really the subject matter expert anymore. I'm a cardiologist, so all of my epinephrine use is for other reasons other than anaphylaxis usually.
You're better than me. I'm using my medical training to write computer code. Okay, so we're trying to model urgent care, and we have captured the services. We're trying to model urgent care by using service codes. We have already modeled emergent and urgent care by using inpatient visits and ER visits. We've already done that, but we want to make sure that we're comprehensive. So we are trying to capture these things called urgent care. Urgent care are not usually classified as ER care, so our ER visit would not capture it. So we're trying to build a rule that's based purely on services. So we've already captured codes that corresponds to the emergency department. The question here is, are there other CPT or CPT-like codes that correspond to high intensity urgent care?
Sorry, Gowtham, I had to step away there, but when I look at this, you have, it looks like an observation domain.
Yeah.
Kind of parent there. The ones that we had found for like acute pancreatitis, those were definitely procedure domain codes. So I just don't know if we actually have the ones that we're looking for, or have the full set represented.
So yeah, let me.
So I mean, I can even pull them all. Like I can pull you one of them.
Yes.
Just to kind of get you in the right place in the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Just give me a second.
So I remember those being mostly hospitalizations. So we have procedure codes for inpatient care. Were they did they represent emergency care?
Yeah, the procedure codes that we found for pancreatitis actually were ED procedure code, like ED visit as a procedure code. And we were capturing what I'm 99% sure were ED visits that were outpatient visits in the visit table, but had these ED visit procedure codes.
Okay, so it was this definition, right? So this is it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's them.
Oh yeah, you're right. So it was, well, that's interesting that this is 99281, and here we had 99281 there. Oh, we have that. It is procedure domain, but the concept set expression was observation. Wow.
Interesting.
Trippy. Yeah, so that is, yeah, so so one of the problems that OMOP has is the procedure codes are not well done. You're not supposed to see this, as from what I understand. You can't have a parent. So basically what's happening is if you use this expression, you're resolving into 10 codes, and the parent code is observation domain, but this child is procedure domain. And that is weird to me. Okay, I'll have to report
Yes, you
that.
need to be very careful about the way you structure that query then, because it also, you want you want to hit the observation table and the procedure table. Yep,
that's right. Okay, so we'll use this. So it sounds like, so these are the codes that we used as part of the anaphylaxis in pancreatitis, right? So the 99281, 282, 283, 4, and 5, which is here, 99281, 283, 4, and 5. So we have that. Okay, so let's use this and let's build our definition. Anaphylaxis in a doctor's office visit. So we have concept sets here should not be an urgent care, should we have at most 0 occurrence of, so I'll say observation. Concepts, urgent care concepts. That is, say, event starts all days before up to 1 day after, the same idea. So even if they have an urgent care code or the day after anaphylaxis, we should exclude them. And event ends, just now we're talking about this. Event ends in relation to that. So it should ends 1 day before to all day after. So if somebody receives any of these urgent care, emergent care codes in a period relation to this, that's either the codes is 1 day before, no, it's 1 day after to 1 day before. So that basically captures that. If you have this code yesterday, today, or tomorrow, you are excluded. So the rule resolves to you have to have at most 0, should satisfy at most 0 of this. Okay.
And just thinking, I know, just to Bruce's point and kind of the points around the potentially using urgent care or emergency rooms in these contexts. This might be a place where we actually also put an exclusion for any adjunct treatments for anaphylaxis. You know what I mean? So, and that would, certainly probably, to the extent that they're captured, it would make us more confident that these aren't, uses of the emergency uses of the emergency room or urgent care just to get a prescription refill, as opposed to for acute anaphylaxis.
Yeah, so we're talking about should not receive adjunct treatment like steroids or bronchodilators and so on. So we're building the reason why we are taking the time to build this in such a complex way is because we are thinking in terms of evaluation. Once we build a complex code definition, we can remove rules out of it and build different flavors of the same code definition. If we use the approach of having this multiple rules, we can see an attrition diagram to say how many people meet that criteria rule by rule. And all of those are informative for us. Okay, so what type of adjunct treatment do we want to remove?
Well, I built out, and I can send you the JSONs if that's faster.
Have you built out the concept sets for the adjunct treatment, or you have built a core definition
for
itself?
bronchodilators, for glucocorticoids. I don't know if in this case we're probably not going to be using the epinephrine just because we're looking for dispensation of an EpiPen. Now the challenge is people may get refills of those, depending on what they've got. They may have some, like they may have kind of coexisting asthma or reactive airways that they also, and that's actually not uncommon to have allergies and also have reactive airways disease. So we could decide whether or not, antihistamines would be one as well, but again, it's actually, who knows, they may actually get refilled of all these things, but maybe actually the IV fluids would be the other one, but I didn't actually build a concept set for that because it's such a mess.
Yeah. The reason we didn't pursue that epinephrine concept set to tease out epinephrine that is more likely to be dispensed versus prescribed. It's just that it's difficult. So the presence of which treatment in this visit would suggest, in this event, would suggest that this is a true anaphylaxis versus not true anaphylaxis. We talked about steroids, we talked about bronchodilators, we talked about antihistamines. Do we want to build a rule for those?
Well, so just thinking back, I mean, I know a little bit about RX norm and the form of the epinephrine. In other words, the injectable auto inject should be relatively clean. There's a bunch of NDC codes for those. So if you know the auto inject epi is going to be more specific to anaphylaxis, I'm not aware of anywhere else that is used. So that should be fairly good. The rest of it is, and I know because of the cost that there's been some kits developed, which I don't know how those are recorded, but auto inject version should be a code in at least in RX norm. There's probably a class that would differentiate auto inject from all the other forms. So that might be useful. And all you care about is if it was prescribed, and they don't have an acute diagnosis, that would be the group 3 thing as well, right?
Yeah, so RX norm, Bruce, leads to 7,895 individual codes in the data sources that I have access to.
Yeah, the fourth one down there would be an example. Fourth and fifth are 2 examples of what we're after, and it'd be interesting. Just prescribing that, you don't care if it was, admit. Although I guess they could be admitting they could be using that. I don't. It's been too long since I've done this in the ED to know if they would use a pen. Probably not. They would probably use the individual dose because it's cheaper.
Yeah. So the others opine that EpiPen is used in the ER.
It's not the only thing, but it is used.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
but then you know that that's an emergency site of visit site. So if it's prescribed outside of that encounter, then it would still fit this use case, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll pursue the epinephrine the later time, Bruce. We decided to look at it. We looked at it in the beginning, and we said we'll pursue another alternate strategy because we felt like it was going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But I think that might be a reasonable way also. We don't know yet. We're all exploring together.
And that doesn't internationalize as well. I know because of RX norm kind of issues. So
Right. Okay. So let's build this rule. Actually, let's do this. Can you give me the concept set that you think we should apply here, Evan? And I will import that.
Yeah, I guess I'd be curious to the thoughts of others, because they basically would relate to glucocorticoids, and they're defined fairly broadly: antihistamines and bronchodilators. I guess the risk is that they might get prescribed those things because those can be, often coexist with whatever allergy concern might have prompted the office visit. So I'm happy to send them. I'm just not 100% sure we should use them, but would just want to open the floor for that for others.
a lot of co-occurrence of asthma with
Exactly.
history of anaphylaxis.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just kind of revised my initial. That's what I was going with that, Gowtham. As I was thinking about it, it was like, well, I don't know if that actually would help you distinguish, unless we're going to do a lot more work, finding IV forms and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Help you distinguish, say, the office follow-up visit from the emergency visit.
Yeah. So let's remove that for now. We can add that rule later on. So let's use this framework. So we have the initial. This section is the same as the submitted cohort definition. We are adding new rules here. Let's finish these new rules. Let's run it on 1 or 2 data sources and see how the results are and see what the numbers are. And then we can make a decision of whether to further tweak it or not. I'm building the definition to this thing here. So here we have.
Can I just do a quick sound check? Are you guys hearing like the construction equipment in front of that I'm hearing? Okay.
Nope.
All right, that's great. I just was getting self-conscious. You guys might think there was something like intestinal happening, and it's not. If you hear something like that, it's there's a backhoe working in front of my house.
So Gowtham, the other thing is saying doctor's office visit, about half of our urgent care is run by advanced practice, nurses and PAs. So it's a little broader than physician there. Again, often there's a mix of physician and nurse practitioner, PA, and they run much of our urgent care now. So you need to be a little broader than physician. We call it ambulatory care, and it's a mixed team nowadays.
You're right. So so now we're talking about site of service, and in the site of service vocabulary, or also called in the US, in the OMA vocabulary hierarchy, so there is outpatient visit. Under outpatient visit comes all of these types. So we are going to make a decision of what is in and what is not in. So I'm gonna.
That looks good, except it also, of course, includes urgent care, which again, I raised the question that may be appropriate, because
so
the difference is urgent care doesn't require an appointment, whereas most of the others do, and there are some same day, physician office, things. So I think that does look like a good list to me.
So here, what I'm going to remove urgent outpatient critical care facility, and I'm going to remove outpatient hospital. I'm going to remove, oh, there you go, urgent care facility. So here, I'm going to put that under emergency, and emergency room or urgent care or outpatient critical care. Okay, and should not be.
What is outpatient critical care?
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
It doesn't have a whole lot of counts, so I'm reassured.
Yeah, it's
That might be like a vent-dependent acute rehab facility, something like that.
Oh, okay, maybe, yeah.
Like we sent a lot of patients to on vents with COVID for outpatient care.
And then if you care, the mental health stuff, there's a bunch of other things that you could exclude, but they're not likely tied to anaphylaxis diagnoses.
Yeah, so right now, this is the concept set expression that I'm proposing to represent the idea of physician visits with prescription, where we're looking for the prescription where we're looking for the diagnosis of anaphylaxis. So
So we're looking for number of patients or are we looking for number of encounters?
This would be encounters, and then unique patients would be derived from that, right?
That's right. It'll be encounters first, and then from that we can derive the unique visit. So there's a lot of people who are being classified as having outpatient visit. We do not know what that outpatient visit means. It could be a physician's office visit. It could be a laboratory visit. It could be an infusion clinic. It can be in a dialysis unit. It could even be a surgical day surgery kind of visit. But we don't know. But that's how it's coded in the data, and we need to take that into account.
That seems to be good enough as an initial thing to get a core set to look at. And what I would do with that would be then to look at a dozen of those patients' cases and see what they look like in real data. But
that's right.
That's different than what you guys can do with this data, I know.
Yeah, so we do look at individual cases where possible. We can't it's not identified data, so it's basically individuals' temporal sequence.
Is there any de-identified note data in these? No, okay.
So,
I mean, there individual sites within the network do have that. Like, I could say from Stanford's perspective, they've run a DID pipeline and they have those notes. It's not certainly not included in the Atlas instance, but you can get to them.
Is that something that you do, Evan? Is do chart review in Stanford?
I haven't done it with those. It was actually something that we were kind of talking about in the context of just, sometimes we find these edge cases. We just want to get a sense as to like how many of these are, how concerned should we be? And so we've talked about maybe doing it in some of these phenotyping projects. We have used it before in other phenotyping projects, but not necessarily with one that was kind of born and bred through OHDSI. Yeah,
and I've done that here in Utah for similar reasons, and it really is efficient to do it that way. You see your errors right away, and I guess we contribute to the N3C COVID one, and it's been helpful for some of those.
One of the things we've also found is, Atlas has a profile review tool, and then there's another one that was built out by Gowtham and others called Cohort Explorer, which is a Shiny app. And even without the actual note data, you can get quite far in terms of just looking at those timelines and figuring, you can. They generally tell a pretty good story.
And that'd be worth looking at early on in this workflow, I think.
Yeah, I found it quite useful in cohort building exercises.
Okay, so I have just imported this definition into the J&J's Atlas instance, and I'm now executing the same on about 5 data sources. So they should have the results in a few minutes, hopefully. And that will give us, and I'll pull up the attrition diagram for it. So I'm now running it on some data sources in another instance of Atlas. So we built it in a public Atlas. This is the odyssey.org. Then I've imported, basically went to this export tab, copied this to clipboard, went into another Atlas instance and pasted that here and reloaded it. That made this fully executable. I'm just pressing that execute button in this Atlas right now. So that's the data source that I have access to. This Atlas here, atlasphenotype.odyssey.org, does not have real data linked to it, so we can't do any execution. So my hope here is to get that attrition chart. We cannot do patient profile review in a publicly recorded session, but I can do that in private outside. The next step, if we see that the numbers from the execution of this core definition is in line with what we would expect in terms of the proportion of persons in the total anaphylaxis, the number of persons in the main cohort versus the number of persons in this new cohort. If it is in the ballpark of 1%, then that potentially answers a question that even if this is a problem, numerically, this is not much. It's only 1%. But if you see that the number is 25-30%, then, or even more than 5%, then we can say, well, it's 5%. It matters. This is a big enough number that we need to think more about.
My guess is it's more than 50%.
You think it's more than 50%?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So
I'd
we should
agree
know.
with that. And to be honest, my prior would be high enough that I wouldn't completely believe. I would need more evidence to discount. I think it.
Yeah, if this comes back at 1%, I don't believe it at all.
Yeah.
Knowing how poorly ICD codes are used, I agree.
Yeah. Like I won't, if you show me a number like 80%, I won't be shocked.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I mean, you're
but then again,
kind of challenges the whole idea of drawing inferences from observational data.
No.
So,
we're just proper Bayesian reasoners.
So, but then again, what you're interested in is two cohorts, a cohort of active anaphylaxis and a cohort of past history of that's still relevant for most research in this area, right?
Yeah.
That's the group you want to work on prevention. So it's a valid sort of type of exploration.
Yeah, so let's, as it's running, let's make sure we have not done any mistakes. Mistakes happen. This is a very complex tool. I like to go through it like 5-6 times before I'm looking at the results. I've done mistakes, not realized I made mistakes, and then ran with the numbers, even presented the numbers, only to realize 1 month later that I made a mistake, and that's just, you lose sleep on it. So this I don't have any issues with because this was used in the previous and presented in the OHDSI form, and I basically copied the definition and pasted it here. So this shouldn't be an issue. It's pretty broad. It has the 2 domains, and when we resolve it, now I need to look at the domains, Evan, because I'm surprised that the observation domain got mapped to procedure domain. I did not know it happens. So it only has 2 domains, so we should be good. In our entry event criteria, we have the condition domain and we have the observation domain. And so this should be good. I don't have any issues here. Here we have a 1 rule that is should have at least 1. And then this rule is exactly 0. This rule is exactly 0. And this one is at most 0 of this, which is essentially exactly 0. I should have just made this exactly 0, but I made it this way because I thought I was going to add additional logic here, but we did not add additional logic. So that should be fine. Now, this is a visit domain related rule. This is a visit domain related rule. This is an there's a bug because we only put observation when you and I we talked about putting procedure. That's why we had that. Okay. Procedure occurrence, urgent care concepts. At most 0 of this, and this actually will make it all exactly.
Are you doing and logic?
Yeah, so now I'm doing and logic, but I changed it to exactly 0 of this and exactly 0 of this. It's just more performant. Okay, so let me stop the execution on that other computer. Glad we saw it.
Glad you saw it.
No, this is done this so many times. It's just we know there's always an error, human error.
One question I had, Gowtham, you didn't hesitate to have a non-standard concept in there that acted as a parent.
Yeah.
Do you, I mean, I've gone through, I know when I was building some of these out, I was kind of going through great lengths trying to, I would go down the hierarchy, find the standard things, include all of them, even individually. It was a lot of work. Are there concerns with having non-standard concepts in the definition, or are we generally okay with that?
Where is the non-standard?
What wasn't like the urgent care concepts, like the parent concept that, it simplifies the concept expression greatly. There.
This is a classification. Evan.
Oh,
this
okay.
Is not, so there are 3 types of groupings. There is standard, non-standard, and there's classification. Classification is fine because all the classification is doing is saying it's not part of a hierarchy, but it is a grouper.
Okay, that's actually great to know because some of them are very, very useful. Especially but I didn't because of the coloring. I kind of interpret it as a non-standard. I mean, and they filter out as non-standard things.
Oh, I see.
Well, actually, maybe you're right. Maybe they filter as classifications, and I just didn't realize they were fair game. That's great.
Yeah. Okay. So now let me cross-check. So we have temporal rules. So we're going to check the temporal rules. So So doctor's office on the same day off. Do we want to make this one? No. Very, very tight. So it has to be the same day. Inpatient visit is, it can start up to 1 day after, and it can end up to 1 day before. That's what we want. Same thing with ER. And for urgent care, we're also doing the same thing up to 1 day before. Okay, cool. All right, copy, export. My virtualization is being sluggish. Okay, there. All right, so we now have, come on, there. So got that. I'm gonna execute. So once we, the biggest challenge is always building the cohort definition in terms of being the most time consuming. And these types of more complex ones are takes longer time, especially if you're pursuing a new idea. What is urgent care visit? What is, but once that is done, downstream is pretty straightforward. MDCD. 0. Okay. So like the downstream is so running core diagnostics and reviewing the results. Those are almost push button. And then even looking at temporal relationships between the cohorts is also pretty much straightforward. You just it's a small configuration change, and they press a few buttons and you get the output. So let's see. We can give it. So in terms of the next steps, so we have to now wait for the computer to run, and then we have to figure out how many events meet this criteria, compare it to the original submission, which is.
So right now we're comparing events though, or are
Yes.
have we taken it to patients?
So we get both numbers at the same time. So here, if you look at the cohort counts, you get events and you get persons. And it will also give us the new cohort will also give us events and persons, and we can compare both of them.
And is the event the visit, any visit with anaphylaxis, or is the event a visit that is not that is an outpatient visit?
So right now we are in the new definition that we built. We will have events that is in a visit that is of the category doctor's office as defined by our concept set expression, but not in inpatient or ER as defined as the inpatient ER cannot be as close as 1 day of this outpatient visit. And they should not have any services that represents urgent care type of care.
Can you run the two queries together as a numerator and denominator?
So they will be populated in a table. Right now, for this particular iteration, we'll only get summary information. To be able to join at the individual level and say, I will have to run core diagnostics on it. So like I'll have to run this one. And there I'll get something called as a cohort overlap. And this will be something like this. So we can actually compare persons with anaphylaxis versus persons with anaphylaxis as defined by this new outpatient physician's office criteria and see the overlap. It will give you this visual gives you person level overlap. It does not give you event level overlap. For event level overlap, we'll have to write a custom query, or I can use the OHDSI feature extraction tool. The feature extraction tool will compare for every event in a target cohort, what is the proportion of events from the comparator cohort in a certain time window. So obviously the comparison is at the person level. So it will do the join at the person level. If a person has anaphylaxis from the initial cohort, the submitted cohort, and also has anaphylaxis from this new cohort, and if it is on the same day, it will give you the numerator divided by the denominator. The comparator cohort will be the numerator, and the primary cohort will be the denominator. If you specify a different time window of -1 to -0 days, or -7 to -0 days, or -7 to 0 days, or -7 to -1 days, it will give you proportions for each one of those. So that will be the next order. So the first order is to see if we are identifying the right set of people in this new cohort definition. If you do that, then we can do all this proportion calculation.
Got it. How long does it take to run the two cohorts and then feed them into this cohort overlap tool?
For these two cohorts in this cohort overlap tool, probably 2 hours. And it all depends upon how fast the computers will run. Like right now, I'm running this here, but it also depends upon well, let's see. Show results. So, come on. Okay, so it's still running. Uh-oh. It is complete and 0. I have no reports. Why?
That's far less than 1%.
No, it should at least show the attrition diagram, right? So we have persons who meet the entry event criteria. So we know that there is lots of people who meet the entry event criteria. So it should provide attrition, even though the end result might be 0. I don't know what's happening here. No, it's still running.
Oh, okay.
It's showing me this, which is weird.
Is that the one you stopped?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me look at the jobs running. It says it's running.
So while
Yeah,
we're, I mean, so we also had these other cohorts that we wanted to build out, kind of the X1 through X5.
yes.
Should we take a look and see what we want to do in those areas?
Yeah.
I have built out I built out X1, X1A, and X2.
Oh, yeah. You want to pull that up, or give me the JSON and I can pull it up here.
Yeah, if you have.
I mean, it's actually just a flip of this, right? So you make this exactly 0, and you make this exactly 1, or at least 1. Then it becomes.
Well, that might be even best to do it from yours, so we have exactly the same logic, but just inverted in the way you said.
Yeah. So the next set.
Gowtham, sorry, since I hadn't followed this as closely, are there some hypotheses that generated the interest in this particular diagnosis? I guess maybe I should look on the SharePoint site a little bit more, but
Yeah, so as part of Phenotype February, we are doing this effort to develop and evaluate cohort definitions. Anaphylaxis was one of the target clinical ideas. I proposed an initial cohort definition of anaphylaxis, and I posted that on the OHDSI forums. Andrea Noel was the peer reviewer for it, and she said the anchoring on the diagnosis of anaphylaxis makes sense, but you may have specificity errors because you may be identifying people who are receiving outpatient doctor's office type of care for the dispensation or prescription of EpiPen, and to justify the prescription of EpiPen, they may be getting anaphylaxis code. So if your code definition is based solely on the diagnosis of anaphylaxis, you may be capturing a large number of people who are just going to a doctor's office for an EpiPen prescription as part of the anaphylaxis action plan.
Yes, so that makes sense. We have a similar issue with rule out atrial fibrillation, rule out heart failure that are diagnosed that way. So it's a common problem. I was just wondering if there were some specific hypotheses that were being interested in testing. This is it's really good to see the sausage being made here. It's very helpful to learn my way around Alice, since I'm kind of a novice at that. So thanks.
Oh, absolutely. And so what we hope to find from this exercise is to quantify the number of people who have that scenario. And it could be as low as 1% to assertions that it could be 60% and 70%. We do not know the answer, and that's what we are trying to find out right now. And if we find out that this is a 60, 50, 30, 20, whatever number, that's a measure of specificity errors of the initial cohort definition.
Right, and then looking at the subset who have the personal history versus the active diagnosis would be interesting, because it just shows the poor behavior and poor specificity of our ICD codes.
That's right.
Well, and technically, I think we're looking at SNOMED, correct? So as the data sets are mapped to SNOMED here.
Yes,
yes, but they come from a mix of problem lists, which we have SNOMED coded, but then the billing diagnosis are ICD, unfortunately, and that's where the bad behavior comes.
Yeah, I am definitely deeply aware of that. When data sets join OMOP, this is a question for y'all. What are the recommendations for how to translate your ICD-10 codes that diagnosis itself may not have a direct connection to SNOMED? What's the recommendation for cross-mapping?
I'm sorry, I just looked at the numbers and got was distracted.
Wait, okay.
And Andrea, you're right.
Yeah. Is that 384,000 out of 485?
So what if this logic is correct? What it is telling us that of the 485,000 people who events that had the code. This is I'm one person here.
People. That's not event.
Yeah, this is people, right? People. It says events here. That's why I was confused. Let's make sure we have it right. Yep. Okay. Of the 485,000 people that met the definition by the diagnosis code, 79% got that in the doctor's office and did not have inpatient or emergency or urgent care. So that's a huge number, and that's in line with your expectation, Andrea.
Yeah, that's why I was so worried about this phenotype.
So then if you could...
this is CCAE, right? So most of the people Yeah, well, we know that. That's why we didn't limit.
Yeah. So this is consistent across the 3 data sources we have checked, or are more or less consistent.
I'm gonna guess Medicaid has higher people.
Medication has lower actually.
Medicaid.
But realistically, that's what happens is you get an anaphylactic evaluation in an emergency room, and then you go home and you have that diagnosis for a long time after. So looking at longitudinally, it'd be very interesting to start with the first diagnosis and then look at the phenotype trajectories of that patient, who has recurrent, who has the peanut allergy that has the EpiPen in their pocket for every flight on that they take and so forth. So I think it'd still be very interesting to dissect this further.
I think we're also seeing a bit of like just a couple other things that's part of this thought process. And so that's anaphylaxis in general. You consider that a lifetime diagnosis. So it is possible to outgrow an anaphylactic allergy, but in general, we treat it as a lifetime diagnosis. And one of the limitations with all the data sets, and this doesn't matter what source it's coming from, unless potentially we're looking at a registry data set from a country that's been keeping records birth to death and has that records for a long period of time. I think a good chunk of the population in any data set likely had their anaphylaxis event documented before the data set data capture started. So I'm not surprised that we're missing the acute event in a lot of these areas.
So there's another another reason why you might be catching a lot of follow-up is because the washout period is only 1 day or 28 days. What is it?
What? I'm sorry.
The washout period. So you're counting every event. Oh, we're looking at people though.
Yeah, we're talking to people right now. If you look at events, the problem is still bigger.
So then the other thing would be the primary diagnosis versus secondary. I wonder what that would look like.
Yeah, and it's definitely possible for people to have multiple trips into the emergency department or hospital for anaphylaxis, but once in general, I feel like once you've had one instance, it's a scary enough experience that you'd like to avoid that at all costs. And so many patients are aware of the need for an EpiPen and how to use that. That doesn't necessarily mean it prevents them from coming in again. But my guess is that if we had a comprehensive record birth to death, you'd have more people with a single emergent event than multiple emergent events.
Got it. You could test this by having the earliest event, first time is one's history, and then see among those, how many do you see in an outpatient? So that you're not requiring a look back period in any of these definitions. So if you create it, like you want to dissect where the problem is coming. One way of doing this is taking only the first event that is observed in the database, require a one-time prior of observation. So that's to your point about people coming in, not having that anaphylaxis already in. So now you're looking at a cohort of people who's been 1 year in the database. So you have 1 year of being observed. Then you see that anaphylaxis for the first time. And then among those, you want to see how much you see only in the doctor's office. That will at least tell you if the problem is coming because of those people who had one anaphylactic event, maybe in the data, maybe not, but then you're only seeing those repetitive follow-up diagnoses showing up every time they come to the doctor because it's such a major event that happened in the history.
So now I'm going to modify this definition just to be a little bit more specific. So here I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm trying to devise the idea here is we still have something called outpatient visit, and that outpatient visit is still pretty broad. And when you look at it, there is outpatient visit, then there is ambulatory surgical center, and then there is birthing center, so on. So I want to see if I filter it down to visit categories that explicitly say is a physician's office. How does it behave? I want to just look at it that way.
So that makes sense, but also, I mean, I think this does a good job of identifying prevalence of anaphylaxis diagnosis. You know, like I said, it's a chronic diagnosis, and it's not good at identifying incident, you know, things. So that's still sort of valid, but you really need to look longitudinally at these patients to really identify. And again, that's why I was getting at the hypotheses, because kind of the reason for studying these people, either prevention after secondary prevention versus primary, you know, diagnosis and management, would be different cohorts for this. Interesting stuff.
So I'm going to try to see what happens if we require that the care be provided in one of these types of facilities, and see what happens.
I noticed, I saw those, I mean, I saw like the family practice one, for example, but it looked like it was a vocabulary that was specific to Medicare. And so I wasn't sure how generalizable.
Yeah, I don't know what this.
Yeah, so Medicare specialty is the vocabulary of family practice.
I don't even know where it comes from.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you could use it on, you know, whether any other data set would have it in there.
Is that, sorry, is that a location or the type of specialty that provided the care? It is a visit domain.
Let's see, this is the doctor's office. We're talking about, when you resolve this, we're talking about this thing called Medicare specialty.
Well, in particular, yeah, down below there, family practice is one as well.
Family practice, yeah. So this Medicare specialty. So where is this coming from? So that's the question.
I think I'm a little more curious how public health clinic is the #1 hit over office visit.
Yep. Yeah, me too.
Gowtham, how easy is it to filter for primary diagnosis or then secondary? Because that's another thing that might help.
Yeah, and off that point of Bruce's, so in EPIC we have the concept, there's multiple types of diagnoses. There's the clinical diagnosis given by a physician. There's a billed diagnosis, that's what goes out for insurance payments. And there's the problem list, which persists over time. You've got a past medical history, which are things that are not currently active for the patient. In general, people don't use it very well. And the primary diagnosis is generally thought of as either a clinical or a billed concept, and would be the leading reason for the visit.
Yeah.
And
so,
do we differentiate between any of these types of diagnoses in OMOP data sets?
Yeah, the OMOP, so OMOP data model allows you to differentiate between them by using a field called condition concept ID and condition type concept ID. So the condition type concept ID has codes in it that corresponds to primary diagnosis or secondary diagnosis, or it can also capture things like first position, second position, third position, or it can say build, or whatever you want. It's possible to do that. The data sources that I have access to does not have all that granular information.
And it's cleaner for inpatient encounters
Definitely.
than for outpatient, but it could be helpful and interesting to explore if available.
Yeah, so that's the richness of the data challenge. And when you generalize these rules for a system that is trying to standardize data across various data sources, it becomes challenging. because now you are using the model of no child left behind versus having an advanced course. And in a distributed network, we are using the model of no child left behind. But if you have a system that has that level of granularity, the OMAP CDM can support the translation and standardization to OMAP structure, and the tools will work. It's just that when you port that to another data source, you will not return any results because the other data source won't have anything. And it's the same problem with like the antibody result positive. So I'm rerunning it just because I want to see what's the number based on what I have. Stop that. I gotta change it because I pressed the button, but I did not change the definition logic. So very interesting findings. We have empirical evidence right now that there is specificity error. And this is important. Sorry, I'm moving too fast.
But only if you care about incident diagnoses, right? Because I mean, it would be interesting to see how many of those are false positive completely. You know, it was a mistaken, it was a rule out anaphylaxis diagnosis or something, right?
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of opportunities for error. I mean, one of the things, Bruce, have you had a chance to check out the conversation so far on the phenotype for anaphylaxis?
No, I haven't. That's
2023?
why I'm probably distracting. That I'll do that, but I've had trouble being overemployed in my other day jobs.
Oh my goodness! They want you to do heart stuff.
Well, this timing was just right to jump in, and I've wanted to kind of watch the sausage being made here. So this has been great, and I don't mean to not distract from it. I'll catch up on the website, but it keeps asking me to change I have 4 different Microsoft Teams accounts, so
Yeah.
changing back and forth is a bit of a hassle. But I'll catch up on that stuff. But thanks, has been really helpful.
I don't think it's actually so much in the Teams, but Gowtham, would you be willing to click over to the Phenotype February 2nd tab on your browser? I think that's the anaphylaxis one.
So Bruce,
that's where we are, Bruce.
Yeah. Okay,
So
I'll catch up with that. I don't need to distract from things.
No, you're not distracting, Bruce.
Yeah,
we are
Bruce,
waiting for the results to come back.
Your input's been great. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so we're as of right now we have validated that this is a real issue, and this is something that if you spend sufficient time, this since this is a real issue, it is something that we can write a paper on, and somebody else will definitely want to hear about it, read about it. So we have to now create a plan for it.
I think that I'd love to continue working on the getting a few more of these definitions for the different pieces that we wanted to investigate. In terms of paper writing, I've also reached out I've got a network of colleagues that do allergy and immunology, just based on training, as well as I do some championing for allergy in my day job here. So I'd like to loop in a few other experts to kind of have a look at some of the work that we're doing so far.
Awesome.
And I wouldn't mind that when we get through our queries of the different cohorts that we're building here, if we do come to a place where we aren't sure about how much more detailed we can get in terms of our sensitivity and specificity, I am curious if there are data sets that would allow some manual chart review. Because I know in some of the studies that, like, for example, that I linked in my post, when work was done, for example, during COVID to look at rates of anaphylaxis to vaccines, they found high rates of the reaction documented in the EHR didn't necessarily meet clinical criteria for anaphylaxis. So I would be quite curious to do even a little bit more in-depth eval of, is it possible to quantify a little bit better sensitivity and specificity of the best EHR/claims/registry-based healthcare phenotype that we have, just so when people do end up using it for research, they have an idea of, you know, how well does this phenotype may represent in the best case scenario the concept that they're looking for. Is this a phenotype that we've considered doing chart validation on at participant sites that are willing to do that level?
Have we considered who is we?
I thought that one of my understanding, and maybe this is me not understanding the validation process for Phenotype Phebruary, but I thought one of the most difficult phenotype, we were going to do chart validation to see if the phenotype had identified true positives and negatives. Is that correct?
We tried.
Okay.
I've not been able to identify a data source which has. So the way I communicated with a few collaborators and sought to see if there was an opportunity. We're looking for a data source that had structured data in the OMOP CDM and was linked to another independent person level data, such as chart to type notes or registries. And I've emailed some of the contacts that I have, and none of them had it.
Okay.
I mean, and this is where, you know, like Stanford does have the DID note table, and it's, you know, it is technically part of OMOP. So there's nothing that facilitates that review that's in, you know, OMOP tooling. You know, I have used that table for other studies, typically kind of NLP stuff where you get kind of a snippet before, and like there's just like a little bit of massaging around, like, you know, as you can imagine, like the level of risk kind of associated with, you know, digging into that type of data gets higher and higher, and then you know, there might be a need to kind of, you know, provision the research in some other way in terms of
Okay.
permissions and stuff. But so I get, you know, I have used it, and I, you know, like I said, we have kind of reviewed snippets, but then as you start kind of exposing the entire chart, I think it gets trickier.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's impossible, it's just that I think the IRBs and stuff all have to be in place, and I'm in a weird place because I'm not actually a, you know, Stanford doc.
Yeah.
But we could look at getting other collaborators. It's just that the time involved starts to kind of really increase.
It does. It's a very labor intense process.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And sometimes the profile review can get you a long way. Where I've found that you kind of hit a wall is, and, you know, Bruce brought it up earlier, is like you just sometimes the rule out wall is a real one. Like, you know, you see the code, you see the investigations, you see nothing after, and you really can't make that determination. Like, did they drop out of the system? You know, did they move out of state? Did they, or was it just ruled out? And you know, those are the places where sometimes you might, you know, in some conditions you might be able to get away with, like we were talking about this with pancreatitis, like a parse of a radiology report that looked for, you know, you know, and look for like a negative evaluation of pancreatitis. Like I could see that as a reasonable surrogate for a pretty decent chart review. Like I'd expect it to be in there in the patients that had a CT. But then with ones like this, you're right. Like you have to look at multiple criteria. You probably need to dig through the full notes to really get a sense as to whether or not they had an anaphylactic reaction, and it gets harder.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And what would doing that? I mean, I've always found this difficult because, you know, yes, if we look at the chart, And we observe that people with this structured code of anaphylaxis and in a emergency room or whatever setting truly have anaphylaxis, as evidenced by somebody's typed notes in an electronic health record. And we do that on systematically on 50 charts and randomly collected in one institution in a 5-year period. All it is showing to us that in that institution, there is such a practice pattern. That doesn't mean that the same practice pattern holds true in across the country or across the world or in a different time period. So it's all it's saying is that physicians who are in that cohort are practicing this way.
It is actually also interesting, in as much as, even though the rule out one is a tricky one. I mean, Anna Stropowitz has been doing some work on abstracting. It's kind of similar to the Cohort Explorer, the exploration of a patient profile, but structuring it even further so that you pull out kind of defined elements that would go into a chart adjudication, but from the structured data. So thinking through those mainstay kind of elements, are the demographics correct? Are the risk factors, what are the relevant risk factors? Draw those out. What are relevant kind of diagnostic considerations? What are kind of alternative diagnoses, and what are their counts? Do they kind of undergo appropriate treatment? Do they kind of have a reasonable profile that fits the prognosis? And they have created a tool called Keeper. It's being ported. I think eventually it's going to be in our package. That'll be something that that is consumes OMOP data. But they showed really good inter-observer agreement in terms of the chart adjudication. Really good agreement with access to the full chart across a few phenotypes. And so there's probably actually even more we can do with that kind of with structured data in terms of that review. And they also showed it consumed a lot less time. But yeah, so there might be quite a bit we can do with structured data just by making it easier to do those case reviews by structuring the case in ways that are amenable to making those calls.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
And like Kevin says, here in Utah, we have the similar capability to look at snippets of notes, and we can actually differentiate history of or past history of from rule out from current history of or family history of. All of those are interesting, and ways of sort of manually curating some of those cohorts. So this is interesting. I think I've been trying to see how we can get our folks interested more in doing the Odyssey type approach to this. I know we're doing OMOP contributions to BCORNet and some other things like the COVID thing, but I haven't found anybody here that's doing primary stuff like this yet. So.
Okay, so after changing the rule, I'm having confused. I'm just gonna share my screen again. And this could still be an error on my part, but let's see. Now I'm not getting good. I'm getting odd numbers. What am I getting here? Let's see what it's saying. So I'm losing pretty much. I'm getting 0 hits here. Why am I getting 0 hits? So we remember this is the modification of the original definition, where we said should be true doctor's office. That was just a name I gave for a subset of visit categories that seem to represent the clinical idea of physician's office, not outpatient visit, but physician's office. And this includes the public health clinic. And when I put that rule in, I'm getting 0 here. This usually indicates some error on my part. So what could be the error? At least one. Doctor's office. Is it occurrence? Is it occurrence? Is it? Let's just as a domain. So there is
You gotta remember these had that had origins and vocabularies that we were wondering if they would even apply to a lot of data sets, right? So family practice was that Medicare one. Like I would suspect it doesn't apply to any data set other than Medicare.
Oh no, these concepts are not populated in retail convention. They may go into visit detail table. They won't go to visit occurrence table. I think that's the issue here.
Oh, I see.
So having any, so in OMOP, there is something called a visit occurrence. There is a visit detail. I wonder if it's populated in the visit detail. Now I'm going into this is some of the banes of data standardization. Okay, so where is it? So it could be that, or it could be visit occurrence, visit, any visit, but visit source concept ID, doctor's office, or can we? So I'll explain what I just did. This is all like rarely used features. So there are two visit tables in the OMOP CDM. One is called visit occurrence and other is called visit detail. So every primary key in the visit occurrence table can have one or more detailed records in the visit detail table. The intent of this detail table was to represent intraday, intra-visit movements. So it could be things like if you had a visit of an inpatient stay, which was 5 days, but you stayed in the emergency room and then you moved to the ICU and then you went to the rehab unit and then you got to a step down unit or whatever, surgical unit. All of those individual units being transferred was supposed to be captured in the visit detail table. To simplify a network study, there is a convention in the OMOP. There's a convention group. That convention group is called THEMIS, and one of their initial recommendations was populate the visit occurrence table with occurrence tables visit concept ID field with these 4 primary concept IDs. And those primary concept IDs are basically inpatient, and ER, emergency room, or outpatient visit. 4 concepts. Those are the primary concepts. So classify every visit into these 4 categories. Capture the details in other locations. So now this particular rule is all about the details. It has none of those parent concepts. There is no visit, there's no inpatient, there is no inpatient and ER, there is no outpatient, and there is no emergency room. And I believe because of that convention, we are not getting any hits for this particular rule. The other tables support that, support capturing this. So I'm trying to see if those other tables would support. The bane of data standardization and network study is these types of things. When you go multiple levels deep, it starts struggling. So let's see if this will work. I think this will work, but let's see.
I'm gonna have to drop in just a couple minutes for another meeting.
No problem. So this should come back as it's a more complex tool, so it'll probably take 12 or 13 minutes. we are, so, yeah.
Gowtham, when I look on Athena, I can't even seem to find a visit detail. Like, where do you find kind of the allowed types for visit detail?
It's the same concepts as the visit domain. So because it is part of the visit domain, it's identical to the visit detail, visit occurrence.
And I'm just curious if it is yet another way to kind of to deal with the challenge that we were noticing, where we, like I said, quite certain that there were emergency visits that were captured as outpatient visits. One of the things we observed was, like we kind of listed there, was the ED procedure codes. But is it possible that there's also something in a visit detail table that would distinguish those as emergency visits or urgent care visits?
Possible, for sure, possible. Okay. Yep, you're right. So that was another issue that I was thinking about. So like the urgent, no, not the urgent care, not this one, because this is based on observation and procedure domain. This should be fine. This should be fine too, because this is a parent concept. This should be fine too, because this is a parent concept. This one, it's only this one that it's affecting.
Okay.
Because this is part of the visit. Essentially, what I'm saying is these concept IDs are probably not populated in most of the data sources. So
But I guess the next steps would be some of the other cohorts that we had been listed out there based on your synthesis of Andrea's feedback, and some of which I've built, but we might want to kind of take a look at those just because some of our decisions differed in terms of what you've done.
Yeah, so let's look at that.
And we could revisit. I'm just gonna, I don't know, because I know Andrew's got to drop off here. We could look to kind of reconvene after we've built out some of those other, X1 through X5. Right. This is that 1A. Yeah.
It's the one you built. Yeah.
Do I have to permission you on it for you to actually see the logic?
Yeah. Yeah.
And which atlas is this on? I feel like I've tried to log into a few atlases and I don't know.
Yeah, this is the.
Is this a publicly available version of Atlas?
So this is the atlas that I'm executing executing it, but this is not the atlas that we built the definition on. We built the definition on this atlas, atlas-phenotype.odyssey.org. So this is a semi-public atlas. I have write access. You can request read access. The atlas demo is a public atlas, and you have write access to it. And the atlas where we're actually running, and I'm showing the numbers, is inside the J&J intranet only. So the biggest insight for today is we have a problem. We expect to have large specificity errors anchoring just on the diagnosis of anaphylaxis, is identifying people who are receiving the diagnosis of anaphylaxis code in a non-urgent, non-emergent, non-inpatient care settings. We are not 100% sure if that is a doctor's office visit. It could be ambulatory surgical center. It could be any other care setting other than the inpatient ER or urgent care. But that in terms of percentage is a big number, 80%. So it is unlikely that 80% of all anaphylaxis is observed in a non-inpatient, non-ER, non-urgent care setting. So that's the biggest insight here.
Yeah.
We don't know.
I need to take off too, but it's been very informative to see this process, and I think there probably is a solution to kind of the definitions of the outpatient encounter and so forth. It'd be really interesting to explore, to drill down to some of these examples and figure out what the right approach is, because I suspect there is one. And it's just the artifact of the process that is doing it. So thanks for letting me sort of watch this being done. It's very informative. I'm happy to kind of participate at least asynchronously in any further evaluation of this. It's a little hard to meet the specific times, but very interesting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Bruce.
you.
Thanks, Bruce. Nice to hear from you again.
Yeah. With the new cohort that has 80% of people, I know you guys have to go, but I'm just thinking this through. I'm still not clear in my head about this, what we have discovered. What we have discovered could still be noise, because it could still be true anaphylaxis people. It's just that for some reason we're not able to can this be a care setting that is truly inpatient? This could be emergent.
I mean, it depends on how big the scale of that potential problem is in terms of determining what a true outpatient visit is from a emergency one. Like, I think based on what we've seen, we've so far by limiting or by removing people with those procedure codes, we are hopefully getting real outpatient visits. Yeah. But that would be the kind of one source of overcounting. But at the same time, this kind of fits, right? Like,
and we did say earlier we would be shocked at 1 or 2%, and then I threw out 80%, and that's actually what you got. Yeah. So like the number you're showing me doesn't.
Yeah.
No, so there is definitely a problem. Agreed. We have specificity problems. Agreed. Our PPV is low. Agreed. We have evidence to support that. Now the question is, how do we fix it?
Well, I guess what's the goal of the phenotype? It's to identify incident anaphylaxis, right?
Yeah, it's to identify acute anaphylactic events, and I think that when clinically we are suspecting that a large chunk of the original phenotype was gathering outpatient care, and we appear to be seeing evidence of that, then to me, I feel a little more comfortable moving towards a phenotype that might be more towards the emergent, urgent, or inpatient care. I think now I'm curious about what do things look like when we layer on medications.
So but did you implement one that limit?
No, I did not limit to inpatient emergent care.
So
this is the opposite. This is the people that.
Yeah.
I've implemented it in those other ones. So they basically kind of invert that logic. So it requires inpatient emergent care, and then the administration of supportive meds and epi.
So you have to create that one, and then you have to look at the distribution of covariates and compare the two populations. For your hypothesis to be correct, that these people that are inpatient or urgent care is true cases, while those that are outpatient care are not true cases. You should be a clear difference in the distribution of covariates first, and then you should see those differences in covariates that are related to anaphylaxis second. So you should see more epinephrine, more, I don't know.
I don't know if we'll see. I'm not sure if we'll see more epinephrine if we can't determine between administration and prescription. So sorry, I have to drop.
Yeah, hi guys.
Bye all.
Thank you.
I can stick on for a bit if you guys are not
Yeah,
exhausted.
I'm for me, I'm thinking this how to take this to the next level. So if these are truly false positives, I want to confirm that.
Yeah, you are still, you are with Andrea, you all are still functioning in the theoretical. You're still not using the data to assess. You're only looking at numbers. You're not looking at composition. You're not looking at, actually we have feedback.
That's the next step, right? So so first step is to identify the people to learn to study the composition of. So we are identifying, we defined the whole definition, whole purpose of this core definition is to identify false positives. Now we'll see the composition of the false positives. Composition could be through core diagnostics, composition could be Phoebe Elevator, could be Cohort Explorer.
Yeah, and I think I think the biggest reason why you're saying all that is because you're not looking at earliest event. There are reoccurrence. People have history of the code and coming, and you'll see the code again and again. I think if you run the same limiting to earliest event and require 1 year prior, the proportion of people who are seen in an urgent care setting will be much higher than what you observe currently.
So it depends if we are looking for incident anaphylaxis, like first anaphylactic reaction, or any acute anaphylaxis event.
100% agree. I'm just talking about the evaluation, and then you can't. I'm just saying, first, let's assess the question. Are anaphylaxis term seen without a requirement on an urgent setting, are those true false positives? You could have a logic where say, I'm going to take any earliest event, I'm going to take an anaphylaxis that shows up for the first time, if it's happened in the first time and in any setting, but I'm going to only take those recurrent events if it's seen in an inpatient setting. You can do that. You know what I mean? I'm just worried that you're going to hit your sensitivity if you only say, I'm going to only believe the ones that are in urgent setting, because you are losing 80%. Do you truly believe that 80% of those cases are false?
That's why we have to look at the composition of the people that we have phenotyped to be false positive. We use rule-based phenotyping to identify false positives. Our next step is to look at the composition of those individuals to see if truly false positive. And the indicators are absence, only epinephrine, but not steroids, not things, antihistamines and so on. The indicators are EpiPen versus epinephrine dispensation. But we can't do that probably.
Oh, you're saying that they have anaphylaxis and they're coming because they have a history of anaphylaxis, or like they're known to have anaphylaxis, they're coming to get epinephrine pen in case.
The assertion, a priori assertion that Andrea made is a large chunk, more than 50% of the people that you identified by diagnosis alone are those individuals who are getting the diagnosis of EpiPen, diagnosis of anaphylaxis for a dispense.
Got it. Oh, okay.
So what we did is to empirically evaluate that assertion, we developed a core definition that met that criteria. So essentially, pure outpatient, non-urgent care, non-emergency, non-inpatient setting, and occurrence of this code.
What?
So these are all.
Is there any other indicator of an acute event other than the setting?
That's what we were talking about. You know, we could look at adjunct treatments, but there's also a fairly large comorbidity burden in anaphylaxis for some of those. So for instance, like some of the adjuncts would be antihistamines, which you might also prescribe. for allergy, for other allergies or other, allergic events. And obviously there's a large co-occurrence of allergies, bronchodilators, which are for, reactive airways like asthma, but you also get that co-occurrence. Now, I think it would be, you start to get a little bit less likely if you're starting to see all of those at once. That would kind of suggest the treatment of an acute event. And then there's also things like IV fluids, which every time I look at, like when I look at the cohort diagnostics output, I'm always a little bit underwhelmed at how well it's captured, or the range of things that might substitute that might represent it. I mean, I think it'd be useful at one point to build an IV fluid as a cohort, because I think, but I think hard to kind of, we could do it. I just don't know how much to trust it at this point. One thing we can do is build out the acute hospitalized ones, like the ER, the ones that we have a high confidence where they are ER and hospitalized, and take a look at their features, and then based on those features, say, well, they those shouldn't be present in any of these outpatient. Well,
visits. Well, that's what pre-evaluator does in theory, right? It creates that profile and start testing based on it.
Yeah, so we if that is correct, then if using p-evaluator, so now we get some numbers. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this is the modified version of the true doctor's office visit. And here, Medicaid, I have 50% match, which is in line with what we had in the previous run. So,
I mean, that visit detail worked like way better than I honestly thought you were going to get a similar result to last time. That worked a lot better than I would have thought.
Yeah, no, it's not 101. It's like advanced level.
Yeah, I've never seen it used. That's actually going to be very useful, even in kind of distinguish, even with the issue that we've talked about, in terms of what is a real outpatient visit versus what are these ones that are ED visits. Like the fact that it looks like that might identify, could conceivably identify real outpatient visits. That in itself is a useful finding.
Yep, it has the potential. Yeah, so now what we're observing is after applying, so this is the rule of outpatient visit. So after applying that, we lose about 24%. Then we apply another rule, which is requires to be a physician's office. We lose another 22%, but we are left with 53%. That's a lot. Simultaneously inpatient, only 0.18. Simultaneously ER, only 2.86%. And then this is the simultaneously. So this is in line with the expectations. This suggests. Let's wait for the other two data sources to come, because other two data sources should be around 80%.
And it suggests that in this case, like 20%, 22% of outpatient visits might be, either inpatient emergency room or urgent care.
Now, what it says is this 22% are stuff like ambulatory surgical centers.
It could be those other things,
centers. It could be.
That's true, yeah.
It could be orthopedic center, whatever, chemotherapy center, dialysis center. But it is not your primary care type of visit. This is strong evidence. Now let's run the core diagnostics on this cohort. We can make the flip of this, or we can use the code that you built. Actually, let's use the code that you built. I'll make a flip of it too. Let's put them all into core diagnostics. and look at the characterization.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, as of right now, the only I kind of implemented the ED care as a procedure only. So it isn't quite the same, but it'll be interesting. You know, maybe we'll learn something about that too. Obviously, I did it as a visit and then as a procedure.
Just like this, right? Yeah. Okay, so now we are thinking in terms of flipping. So what's your can you provide me privileges to your cohort ID?
Yeah, I did. I opened up both of them to you. So one of them, I mean, X1A is, well, what was X1 again? Hang on a second.
I think it's overlapping with an inpatient visit. An inpatient or ER visit.
Okay. That one I don't think I don't know if I granted you. So that's 11530. I'm just going to give you permissions to that one.
What was the number?
I'm just giving you permissions to just right now. 11530.
Yeah, 40% match. So it was okay. So we went down from 80% to 40%, but still it's a lot. So with it now, this is a more conservative rule than what was applied before. Conservative because we have this new inclusion that has to be a true doctor's office visit. So essentially, we are saying if you have a diagnosis of anaphylaxis in an ambulatory surgical center or dialysis center and all those places, you could have true anaphylaxis. So we're just accepting that because you wouldn't get an EpiPen prescription there.
I mean, you might, but like it is what it is.
But
yeah.
Even then, 74%. So it's high. In Optum DOD, it's 70%. In Optum EHR, it's 50%, and IBM Medicaid is 50%. So basically, even after applying the conservative rule, you're still getting a high number.
Yep.
So yeah, so let's look at the composition of it, and let's go do the let's identify. So we have let's identify the flip of this and do a comparison. And if you observe that the characteristics of the people who meet the inpatient ER is different from the composition characteristics of these people, we have evidence that they're different. And that's telling us that one group probably has anaphylaxis, another group probably does not have anaphylaxis.
Well, they might, but they're just getting outpatiently. They're just getting the outpatient management.
Yeah, it's harder. I mean, we're just we're trying to and then let's also try with Phevaluator. With Phevaluator, let's restrict to anaphylaxis with inpatient care with maybe some treatments of anaphylaxis.
Are we still recording?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. Don't know if you want to or not.
No, I think we are done. We found we have we have gone through the process and we have discovered that we have specificity errors in our definition, and that means we've accomplished our goals, right? And now we are trying to figure out more details of how to solve this. All right, I'm going to stop recording.